Okay, Marcos, you said you wanted to set the song up.
Yeah. So this is a snippet from my most ambitious composition in some ways. It's a classical piece, and it is basically a one-woman opera. And it was about affirming my love of my mom, really, and her heritage, her Freistaat German American farm heritage. This is just an instrumental snippet, so maybe you won't hear the farm in this part, but it's a setting from some essays that she wrote about growing up on the farm. So you won't hear the farm, but maybe you'll hear the love. And this is from a snippet. This is from the third movement, which is about my grandfather, my Opa, Edgar Willie.
Okay, let's listen. Wow. Am I saying wow after every? I just noticed. Am I being too repetitive?
Could be one of your catchphrases.
Um,
or
Wow.
or it could maybe only happen on this podcast.
then I'll switch
So
it.
then
I'll go. Oh,
I'm gonna take it as a huge compliment that the song
Yeah.
gave you that wow feeling.
it definitely made me feel wow. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion in that. I can definitely feel that. You said this was for your mother.
Yeah, it's so my mom wrote some essays about her grown up experience, and I was invited into this composition. No, that was after the composition class. I had been invited to a composition class by Vida and Ishmael Wallace, who have this concert series on the Upper West Side called What a Neighborhood, presenting composers from that neighborhood. I'm not from that neighborhood, but my church is, so they invited me. And so I thought I might have an opportunity to present work if I could build it that was lifting up my mom's words, and I thought I might have the capacity to do it. So it's not, for me it was ambitious, because all that exists. For some folk that might be easy peasy, but I've had a lot of music in my life, but I studied dance in college. I don't have formal musical background, and that's paper music, So it took a lot of learning, haciendo el camino al andar, making the path by walking, to make that 20-minute piece of
20 minutes.
Yeah.
So is that which CD is that? Is that on? Is that
That
on your
is
upcoming?
that is not released, and what I would love is for that piece to have other opportunities to be performed. I think it could be really strong with dance, perhaps. It could be really really strong, what it needs is a pianist, violin, soprano, Leanna Heber, my ex-wife, sang the lead role when we did it originally, and she was spectacular. So if she's available, that'd be cool. But yeah, I'd love the that was just a rehearsal recording. So I'd love the opportunity to make a better quality recording of it. But most of all, I'd love it to get seen and get performed.
Yeah, I think I would enjoy that. I think that would be really cool because it definitely has a theatrical quality to it. And yeah, 20 minutes. I mean, it sounds like an opera.
Yeah. So ambitious for me, but like if there's somebody who has a grant to send my way, relatively affordable when it comes to music theater pieces, right? It's 20 minutes. You can you can fund that. You can fund 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Or even just to make a great or a good quality video of it, performance video of it would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, some sort of symphonic production of it, or
That'd be cool,
performance
too.
of it. And
Yeah.
that would, I think that captures that well.
Yeah. And just to clarify how it does work as dramatic music for me at least, that ding 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 ding, that's Edgar Willie. That's my grandfather's name. And then ding, dee 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 dee, that builds to the vocal coming back in. And I remember my father, Edgar Willie. So it's all part of the dramatic fabric, whether or not there are words, right? The dramas in the music itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
The characters, the conflict are in the music.
Yeah. I think if music speaks to us in any way, it's through our emotions. It's like, you listen to a melody that doesn't have any lyrics, and there's no precise meaning to it. It speaks to your emotions. Some sort of primitive sense that you get either of whatever the music's trying to convey, a foreboding feeling, a sad feeling, and an angry feeling. So yes, I definitely agree with that. I wanted to know a little bit about your specific influences, specific artists that you like that have influenced you.
Yeah. Well, I'm like outside of almost every canon. As so far, Apple doesn't know what to do with me in terms of my listening habits. In terms of my listeners, Apple, anyone who likes Lin-Manuel Miranda, I think would like me too. That's been a breakthrough for me. Some of my friends who listened to my stuff early on were like, "Oh man, I think it's good, but I don't think there's a market. It's like dramatic, like lots of genres, but then it's like keeps being like rap that comes up. Like there's no market for that." And then Hamilton made $1 billion maybe, and they pointed out to me like, "Oh, I think there might be a market." So anyhow, to me it's just a contemporary way of hearing and seeing connections between genres. So anyhow, what's really the artists who've really influenced me is very eclectic. Growing up, I kind of, in common with Lin-Manuel Miranda, we saw, when I was first visiting Abuelita in New York, in the Bronx, we went to see a chorus line. And then we had a chorus line on 8-track, and then on record, and then on tape, and then on CD. And we knew a chorus line, the Broadway musical, by heart. by the time I was way before it was appropriate for me to know the words that they say and the themes they talk about in the musical chorus line. I knew that by heart. And there have been a few few Broadway shows that have been like that for me. In the Heights, Rent, and Hamilton have been like that for me also. My ears were lit up to James Brown when I was 7 years old, and that was my first tape. The first record I chose to get for myself was a James Brown tape. And then I also, in one of my songs from Code Switching, I talk about how I heard hip hop really early on, but the folk I hung out with didn't curse, and I was even so I got this clandestine bootleg copy of Nightmare on My Street, the Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince song that's about Freddy Krueger. It's like most grown-ups, when they hear it, they wouldn't take it they think it's funny. But once I heard that mix of rhymes and beats and storytelling, that was it. But even listening to that, I had to sneak it. Because I knew at one point he said, "Damn." And so I had to turn down. I knew where that part was, so whenever I listened to it, I'd turn it down.
Oh no, and just turn it down.
So if that's how I felt when I heard "Damn," and I'm sorry, Mom, if you're offended by me saying "damn," when I heard other words come up in hip hop, it was more problematic for me, right? So again, with hip hop, I had in the song I say my love affair with hip hop took a pit stop, almost flip flop when this gangster started to drop. But before that, I loved old school soul and jazz. I could always feel the freedom in jazz, and that's where I turned. I turned to oldies, especially doo-wop, the Platters, soul. I turned to jazz, especially Coltrane. Music that had this spiritual element to it, and then in church, gospel, and then really started to intentionally listen to gospel heritage as an adult. But yeah, so pretty eclectic. Then the hip hop, the big hip hop influence that I should mention that I haven't is definitely Calle 13. They have made the path. They have shown that you can be multi-genre and kind of bridge things together with hip hop. They've done it in Spanish, so lots of the U.S. audience doesn't have a sense of that. And my voice. So all these influences were cooking, and then I first started really wanting to compose. After in high school, I was in an arts high school and studied voice, and we sang a really hard 12-minute a cappella composition called Hymn to Saint Cecilia by Benjamin Britten, and I hated it because it was so hard, but it got under my skin, and I wanted to understand it. I felt that it was beautiful, but it seemed unnecessarily strange. And then I tried to dig down and understand what he was doing there. It's text by W.H. Auden. It's a very, very modernist. It seems simple on it. Both the text and the music seems simple on surface, but it has this challenging complexity. So I got deep into Benjamin Britten, and Britten Peers Foundation. If you're listening, I could definitely have an album worth of stuff that's based off of his music if you want Britain to be brought into the 21st century in a hip hop context, please call me. or leave a message at marcosenlaguagua.com. That's the better way to do it. And then I really started to make a lot of music. So that made me want to make music, but I wasn't very productive. Mi voz como cantautor me salió del tambor, tras de la bomba. So my voice as a singer-songwriter came out of spending an immersive semester in Puerto Rico, especially with Dr. Dufresne from the University of Puerto Rico and Don Modesto Cepeda in his La Escuela de Bomba y Plena, Don Rafael Cepeda in Villa Palmeras, Santurce. And when I experienced that you could start with the voice and the drum and grow out from there in ways that could be potentially infinitely complex and connect to the universe and to divinity, I started filling my notebooks with songs. And I've been at that for about, 30 notebooks.
And what about the content, the lyrical content of those notebooks? What were those about?
Yeah. Something grabs me, and so I'm thinking about the term reconciliation, and that comes from the New Testament, comes from St. Paul, I think. And so, yeah, something grabs me, but seems kind of unreconciled. And I wonder and go to work and see if I can take it a little further. Take this thing that's kind of unresolved and either resolve it or explain it, develop it, So lots of So some songs start. It's just like a situation, and I think I reflect on that situation, like in Hipnotizada. Cantaré, Mi Bomba was one of my first compositions right after I'd come back from Puerto Rico, and it's actually riding a bus, and that's part of why I thought about the Guagua thing, and that in that song I try. It arises from conviction of the importance of and the value of Afro-Puerto Rican roots culture. And so seeking connections and expressing convictions, I think that's a big part of where songs start for me.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I can sort of see how your religious background influences that. In a very cool way. One thing I noticed about what you said about your influences, you mentioned no punk rock. You mentioned
I'm sorry, bro.
No heavy metal.
Sorry.
I don't understand you, Marcos.
So you can school me, man. I'm always happy to keep learning.
No, actually, you can go on and on about all those Latin. Actually, you lost me in pretty much every. I don't know anything about gospel. I don't know anything about Latin music, even though I'm Dominican Puerto Rican. I've listened to a little bit of jazz. I like to think of myself as eclectic.
Yeah.
But really, it's usually just, for me, it's either classical music or like heavy metal. And that's basically it.